All right, Nick, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. I think head coach Sean McVay is one of the greatest minds in the NFL today as far as his offensive prowess. You know, the way that he goes about things is different than anybody else. You see his coaching tree get gobbled up by the entire NFL. He's a guy in his own right that has been spectacular. But with that said, there are some miscues that McVay has made in the past as far as, some game clock management type decisions that have left people scratching their heads. Hopefully, no more with the latest hire that the Rams have made. I think this is a really interesting one. Let's get in the article and we can talk about it on the other side. This, of course, is from over on NBC Sports. It says, for all his brilliance at game planning and play calling, Rams head coach Sean McVay has made more than his share of mistakes as a coach, specifically when it comes to clock management. That was particularly notable in the Rams' playoff loss to the Lions when McVay blew 2 timeouts early in the second half of the game that ended with the Lions running out the clock to secure a 1-point win. Recognizing that's an area where he needs to improve, McVay hired John Stryker as a new addition to the coaching staff with the title of Game Management Coordinator, and McVay cited the timeout mismanagements as the kind of thing Stryker will help him avoid. Not use my timeouts in the second half until I need them to, McVay answered when asked what Stryker will help them with. McVay said Stryker has been very well respected in the NFL for his work with the Titans over the last 6 years. Nick, I think this is a great hire, a heads-up hire. It's great when a coach can eat a little bit of humble pie and say, I need some help in this situation. I think this coach of Stryker has been well respected. I think it's a great hire for the Rams. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this hire, but Rams fans, let us know in the comment section below. Free agency is coming up. I think there's a lot of interesting options out there. Let us know who you want the Rams to target in free agency this offseason in the comment section below. But Nick, what are your thoughts on the latest hire of John Stryker?
So anytime you're dealing with any really smart, high-flying leader or executive, which is essentially what Sean McVay is. I know he's the head coach, but he is the number one figure with the Los Angeles Rams. Him and Snead, of course, are running the show. Snead front office, McVay essentially coaching, player development, all that kind of deal. It's important to understand that when you're really smart, you get siloed and you just get really, really good at what you know. And sometimes there's a few things that just fall out of your sphere of influence that can really hurt your organization. A great historical example of this is when the late, great Steve Jobs was developing the latest round of iPod and iPhone products that were revolutionizing the world. He had a problem because he's a product guy. He's more of a technical guy. He's a marketing guy, but he had a lot of issues with manufacturing and production. That just wasn't something he was good at. So we hired a guy named Tim Cook, who is now the CEO of Apple, a very successful CEO, obviously in his own right, and made him the chief of operations at Apple. That position had never been filled in any significant manner before. Steve Jobs at that time, the genius that Steve Jobs was, recognized that this was an area that he needed help. He was top of the world, the number one guy, the 0.0001% at 4 or 5 amazing things. He literally changed the world, but he was with it enough to recognize there were a few things he were deficient in. He brings in Tim Cook, solves supply chain management, solves a lot of the manufacturing production issues, and Apple, of course, continues to go on and do the amazing things that Apple has continued to do. This is very similar. McVay is a genius in a number of great ways. He is phenomenal, of course, in terms of player development. He's phenomenal, of course, in terms of identifying talent. Puka Nacua being a great example of that. He's phenomenal in his game plans. He's phenomenal in his in-game play calling with the offense, right? He's great at developing coaches. One area where he has been deficient, it's the reality, is situational time clock management. He's been average to below average most of his career. And you know what? That's not unheard of for coaches that are very hands-on with the play calling and strategy, either on offense or defense. So what does McVay do? He follows the Steve Jobs route. McVay is the genius of football that Steve Jobs was to the genius of his industry. Jobs was like, okay, I need someone to help me with something I'm deficient in. McVay does the exact same thing. He says, okay, I'm going to bring in a guy. He's going to be in charge of managing our time situations, our game situations, our clock situations, our timeout situations to make sure what happened with the Detroit Lions in the playoff game never happens again. This is yet another example of why McVay, I think, is the perfect head coach in the NFL today. There's a lot of great coaches, a lot of great minds. Andy Reid, of course, you had a lot of great ones recently retire with Pete Carroll and, of course, Bill Belichick. But when you look at who I think is the smartest, best, when you factor in everything that comes into a head coach, McVay is, to me, clearly the number one guy, and moves like this are the reason why.
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a great hire because this is a guy in his own right that is very brilliant in his field as well, just something that McVay isn't well versed in. You said he specializes in sort of things. This is a guy who is, strangely enough, has kind of been a specialist in clock management situations. The Tennessee Titans rave about him. Mike Vrabel loved him. Arthur Smith loved him. They said he was almost like the Kaiser Soze of his position. Very underrated, very unknown, but he's a guy you don't want to mess with. He's famously been known to the whole situation with the New York Jets versus the Tennessee Titans, where they took intentional penalties to stop the clock and get the first down. He was the mastermind behind that plan. And he's kind of a guy that knows the ins and outs and the rules of timeouts and just all of those sort of situations. So I think this is a great hire for Coach Sean McVay. And it was a hire of opportunity because we see Mike Vrabel let go from the Tennessee Titans. His staff opens up once again. McVay is like hops on the opportunity. Hey, a guy that's done a really great job so far in striker. I think he's underrated. Let's go ahead and steal him away from somebody before they can figure out what they have. I think this was a brilliant move by head coach Sean McVay. And it's like you said, he's showing again and again that he's growing, he's improving, he's learning. And I think this is going to be one of those moves that helps the Rams just give them that little edge to get them to the Super Bowl.
And let's not discount the fact that McVay was able to humble himself publicly. Like, this is a public admission that, hey, I suck at this, right? And trust me, that goes a long way. That authenticity breeds that leadership and gets coaches and players to buy in. Because if you have a coach, and we see this sometimes, and these coaches, frankly, normally don't last very long, but they act like they're God, like they are infallible in terms of their decision making, and players don't buy in because that's obviously fake. That's obviously 100% inauthentic. I think of Eric Mangini with the New York Jets and Cleveland Browns from many years ago. He kind of gave off that vibe. McVay, 100% obvious. He's able to sit there and say, yeah, I know I suck at this. I know we got to get better at this. And I'm bringing in an expert to address the problem. So not only is it a great hire, of course, but it also breeds that authenticity. It gets people to buy in. It gets that human element behind McVay, which is just as important as anything else. So once again, the Rams organizationally, Snead does a great job, but what McVay does as the head coach leading this franchise forward, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And this is the reason why, as we get ready for 2024, the Rams are quietly one of the favorites to make a run to another Super Bowl.